I'm going to move into fungal now. You ready? Fungal. So let's talk about this fungal meningoencephalitis. So here we get into an interesting dynamic, right? We have meninges, and what's encephalitis mean to you? Good. Brain parenchyma. Now, your most common patient who is susceptible to fungal, as you'd expect anywhere up and down the body, would be an immunocompromised patient, right? For example, what if you have fungal infection of the esophagus? Oh boy, immunocompromised. What if you find oral thrush? You take a tongue depressor and you scrape off that white stuff off the tongue. Immunocompromised is what you're thinking already. No exception here. Common organisms include Cryptococcus neoformans, Coccidioides, Candida, Mucor. Your focus, take a look. The letter C. Letter C. Cryptococcus, Coccidioides. You could have aspergillus, you could have histoplasma, you could have blasto. They're all here, right? But your focus would be on the first two, please. Let's talk about cryptococcal meningoencephalitis. I'm only going to focus upon a few here, the ones that are more common. Most common fungal infection of the CNS. Typically, who's your patient? Immunocompromised. Do not confuse this with Candida. Well, how is the patient breathing in? Or should I say, what's the access point? Maybe inhalation of spores from soil, or maybe your pigeon crap. In other words, your pigeon stool excrement. So think about all the different places where pigeons love to play. Maybe you're working in an office in which right outside your window, every morning you are breathing in that lovely pigeon excrement. Or maybe you are, living underneath the bridge because you feel like camping out. I'm joking. But you're a homeless person underneath a tunnel, whatever, and then what happens? While you sleep there, you might get pooped upon by a pigeon. Anyhow, point is, Cryptococcus. Protein headache, quote unquote, increased intracranial pressure, and cranial nerve palsies are common presentations of cryptococcal. Can have a very bland presentation, though, so keep that in mind. So please look for your immunocompromised patient, most common, fungal CNS infection, cryptococcal. Let's walk through in great detail what you're going to use to diagnose your patient with cryptococcal meningoencephalitis. In the CSF, your lymphocytes, very low glucose and elevated protein. I need you to keep this as being very important to you. And you go back to that table and I group together viral and I put in fungal. But here, make sure that you keep separate your cryptococcus because this is the most common CNS infection. And the ink should come to mind immediately. Cryptococcal antigen is highly sensitive and specific. Make sure you know what cryptococcus looks like. Please, in microbiology, do that for me now. Let's continue. Now, what's interesting about chronic type of cryptococcal meningitis, look where we are, the basal leptomeninges. Why am I bringing this to your attention? Pay attention. In the basal region, what if you were to then block the outflow of CSF from the foramen of Luschka or Magendie? Stop. So now you're thinking about the lateral ventricles. You know about your ependymal cells. You're producing CSF. You go from your lateral ventricle, third ventricle, fourth ventricle, and then you should come out of your apertures to bathe the spinal cord, right? But what if you block that outflow? And you call this an obstructive, non-communicating type of hydrocephalus. Interesting. So if you're confused about hydrocephalus, not to worry. We'll talk about that in great detail. The antimicrobial therapy here, amphotericin B. So this would be a good time for you to pay attention to some of your blood-brain barrier type of pharmacology. Here we have amphotericin B. We have others here as well, but for the most part, focus on amphotericin B. Continuing our discussion of infectious type of CNS, we have more common in immunocompromised patients, but this time we have parasitic. Under these, we have toxoplasma. We'll talk about cysticercosis. There's malaria, amoebiasis, and also trypanosomiasis. You've heard of trypanosoma before in reference to Trypanosoma cruzi and Chaga. We'll Talk about toxo, talk about cysticercosis. Parasitic meningoencephalitis, more commonly, once again, found in immunocompromised. We have now, all I've talked about so far is just fungal and cryptococcal. That's where your focus should be on. Now we moved on to parasitic.